Okay, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think there are some people from the Far East, so nearly good night for you. Uh, welcome. My name is Venkat Rao, and I work with Srinivasa Farms. I have the privilege of being the head of the layer business here in India. I manage the production, sales, and services. And I am your host today. And before I hand over the screen to Dr. Jayaraman, I just want to welcome. We have about people from 38 countries registered, and as of now, 210 people in the session. We are expecting a few more people. More, we had about 600 people registered. So I'm expecting many more people to come actually. And this session is being recorded, so we will be posting this later on social media and we will be sharing this link. Now, why this seminar? As you know, Srinivasa and Highline have been doing seminars, webinars in the past. And as we were looking at what seminar we should be doing this time, we were deliberating between summer management and disease management, vaccines and all. And one thing I thought, when I go all around India, I hear one thing which is common, other than, of course, the egg prices and future of the industry, is diseases. Which vaccine? Is it to do this vaccine before, that vaccine before? Which vaccine is better? What days to do it? And of course, I am not a technical guy. So I thought that the best way to do that is to get an expert. And who better than Dr. Jayaraman? I think he needs absolutely no introduction to most of us here. But there are people, I think there are people from many parts of the world who may not know him. So Dr. Jayaraman, K. Jayaraman, a graduate from the Madras Veterinary College, has got over 27 years of experience in the poultry industry. As most of you know, he's offering currently services for many big companies in India, South Asia, Middle East and North Asia as an independent consultant. And before he started his journey as an independent consultant, he was a well-known person in Kemin technical services function. He was heading that. And I have had the privilege of working with Dr. Jayaraman both in the broiler side of the house and now in the layer side of the house. And I have found him, his troubleshooting and skills, whatever you have put here, I've actually personally experienced that, and I'm sure a lot of you have also experienced that personally. And when there is issues, I think there are few people who in India and maybe this part of the world reach out to. One of them is Dr. Jayaraman, right? So Dr. Jayaraman, without much, I think it's written whatever is there. I hand over to you, sir. Thank you very much for accepting my request on behalf of all of Srinivasa and our farmers. With that, I hand over to Dr. Jayaraman. Thank you very much once again, sir.
Thank you, Venkat sir. Thanks for the nice introduction. Srinivasa has approached me for an effective vaccination for the commercial layers on the disease management side. I was really happy to say immediately yes. The reason being, the current situations, the disease scenario is definitely not a good thing, especially in summer. And you do have a lot of challenges, not only in terms of trying to understand it and also to handle it. So I happily said, definitely, sir, I could do that. So my intended line of speech for the next 35 minutes or 40 minutes or so, a little bit about the basics. Of course, you should know little about the basics of the immunity, then you will be able to do a proper vaccination scheduling. And what the commercial, the layers are facing currently, what are all the problems that I will be touching it upon. Third one is that even though you do vaccinate, you tend to find sometimes outbreaks of the problems or the suboptimal production, and still you tend to get diseases. What could be the reason for that? Why it is happening? And what reasons is complicating that? I would be touching upon that in my that chapter. Fourth one is that what is the for effective vaccination strategy, what you should know, how you devise a schedule, what are relevant to you, and how you would be able to come back on that with lesser damages. It's a dynamic one, you know. So what would be your strategies to overcome or devise a good vaccination schedule, and finally take home message. So this is going to be my line of talk in this subject. If you ask what is a health, it can be defined as well. Health is a balance between a disease and resistance. Are you healthy? If you say I am free from diseases, you will tend to say, yes, I am healthy. The same way, when you are going to talk on the poultry, you will be looking at it, how the birds are healthy. I mean, it's they are less problem having issues from the diseases. So that's how you can say. But if you take diseases, sometimes it could be infectious, sometimes it could be non-infectious. Infectious means whatever like viruses or bacteria you can call is an diseases. Non-infectious could be sometimes toxins or something like that. That could be, you can say, non-infectious causes. Coming to the resistance part, some of them are general. For example, cell-mediated immunity or innate immunity, all those things will come under that, the general part of it. And specific immunity will comes from that particular, the humoral side of it, mostly. Of course, cell-mediated also parts a little bit on that specific immunity. So you will be looking at it from the resistant part of it. From in this aspect, our vaccinations and our vaccinations scheduling and everything is going to start. What's a vaccination? Basically, vaccination is nothing but giving some or inoculating specific biological substances through which you are going to stimulate the immunity. When the immunity is stimulated or developed, it gives a resistance to the particular bird or animal. All right. What is that? How we are going to do it? You are going to do it through two things, through the live vaccine and through the inactivated vaccine or killed vaccines. When you are talking of live vaccines, you have got two type of sectors. One is that attenuated or passaged vaccines. That's the most part of it. Few of them are vectored vaccine. It's like a piggybacking on a particular vector. For example, Marek vector or pox vector. You would be doing giving live vaccine. Inactivated vaccine is the vaccine, those vaccines which are commonly we called as killed vaccines, because the virus or bacteria whatsoever we are inactivating, we are killing, and then we are injecting. So we have very simple. We have got a live vaccines and inactivated vaccines. All right. Live vaccines could be viruses or sometimes bacteria or protozoa. Protozoa, for example, if you are having cocci vaccine, they are also live vaccines. When you are going to give it, they multiply in the bird and replicate, and then it produces immunity. They are two types of immunities they are producing. Mostly they are producing cell-mediated more, and to some extent, humoral immunity. What is humoral immunity? When you are going to give it, it produces later stages antibodies. That antibodies, what we are measuring as a titer, that we say is a humoral immunity. Inactivated vaccine is quite popular, whether it's especially in the long-lived birds, commercial layers and breeders, they are very, very supportive one. of course, to some extent in the broilers as well. They are again, the viruses and bacteria. When they are going to give it to the birds, they are going to produce the, they recognizes, the bird recognizes and produces immunity against, means antibodies against it, what we are calling as a humoral response. So when combined with these two things, live vaccines and inactivated vaccines, we are trying to protect the bird. That, okay, that's what we generally call it. Live vaccines are basically first level of defense. So when the challenge is high, or when any first thing, when it enters the bird, for example, assuming you are having a viral challenge, it first enters into the bird. That particular period, when the live vaccines are there, it gives a mucosal immunity, and does not allow the disease viruses to replicate. So always, that's why whenever we look at the vaccination schedules in the commercial layers, the day one itself, we are positioning some of the vaccines like IB and Newcastle disease and all. Why is that? Because before it gets colonizers, these live vaccines will prevent. They are just like a gatekeeper. What gatekeeper does in practical sense, he will just say, hey, don't stop here, don't come. So that's the same way it will try to lock in and it will not allow. Okay, if the force is higher, the number of people are higher, what happens? It goes into the bird, and then in your house or in the poultry's body, you have got a lot of antibodies. So which is there in the blood. So they try to fight it out and try to eliminate it. You have to understand one basics. Live vaccines, specifically, they are having capacity to block the antigens and replications. They don't allow. But killed vaccine, they basically don't do that job. They don't prevent the disease viruses entering or bacteria entering. Once it entered, it will try to engulf or it will try to fight it through that. So there are basic differences between live vaccines and the inactivated vaccines. Inactivated vaccines has got one another, these things, they also prevent from oviduct colonization. What do you call by oviduct colonization? See, for example, when you are going to have a diseases like, for example, Newcastle disease, you will find drop-in production. When the drop-in production, the egg size also goes down. Sometimes misshapen eggs also, or small eggs, what you call PBX you get, right? So that is because the virus entered into the oviduct and it has caused the damages. So these killed vaccines, when the titer levels are high, when the circulating antibodies are high, they some extent or the greater extent, they prevent. So that is the advantage of the killed vaccine or the role of the killed vaccine. If the level of the titers are good, they do not cause major giveaway to the diseases. They block it. They don't allow them to drop the production or damage the eggshell. But if the level is not so good, for example, in HI values, if you talk of Newcastle or the LPA, H9 infections, somewhere if you are having the titers above 9+, you don't get that much damage. But if you are going to have a lower values, it will prevent the bird from mortality, but it will not prevent from the drop-in production or the quality issues in the egg. So that's the role of the killed vaccines. Okay. So some of them are basically cellular immunity. For example, laryngotechitis and CAV and all, they primarily act upon cellular immunity. But some of them are having production both the things, both cellular and humoral. For example, Newcastle and all, they have that. In general, when you are going to talk, depending upon the situation and the diseases, whether it is a local immunity is how important or it is less important, it defines. We cannot say one concept equal for all that. So when you are going to say which is better, live vaccine or killed vaccine, this is a very, very frequently asked question in many of the farmers or in the forums or these things. The answer is in the bottom, it depends upon the situation. For example, when you are having a problem, when you are having a disease outbreak, in general, the vaccines are defined basically for protection of the animal. Before the disease strikes, you will be giving it. All right, you are having sometimes outbreak situations, and you may tend to look at it, application of vaccine. That time, if you ask which is better, I would say live vaccine is better. Likewise, when you are going to say, probably in the day old, when to prevent your the protection of bronchitis viruses, or which would be better? If you ask me, I would say a live vaccine would be a better choice. But when you're going to say, when you're continuously giving the live vaccines, especially in the laying phases, sometimes whatsoever, if you're going to give it, the titer may not rise. In that particular situations, when the disease challenge is high, you would tend to look at it. My titers are drawing down. Even after application of the live vaccines, it's not working. What should I do? Inactivated vaccine would be a better choice to boost up the titer. So at the point of lay, if you want to keep the titers in a better level, for example, Newcastle, ND inactivated or ND plus IB inactivated is a better choice. So for the answer, simple answer, which is better? I would say it depends upon the situation, age of the bird, and the nature of the titer. I mean, the level of the titer. Sometimes we give vaccine, but they don't tend to give a good response. Very simple examples I can quote here. If your intestine is not that much good, or the intestinal health is not good, your immune response to that would not be that great. I can say from two perspectives. Perspective one, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue or GOT, which is the lymphoid organs, are very highly placed in the intestine. When intestine is damaged or health is not good, they don't respond properly. Number one. Number two, the first site of replication for a vaccine, like Newcastle, it's the intestine, then it goes to the trachea. When your intestine is going to have an issue, how you can expect the bird to get a good performances? Quite simple. So intestinal health is also very important. These are all the drivers for the birds to produce a reasonable amount of good intended amount of the response or seroconversions. Okay, coming to the diseases in the commercial layer. There are quite good number of diseases, but I have taken a quite common thing, few in viral and bacterial. In some places, we do find coccidiosis as well. That's a protozoal. When you're going to look at the bird, whether it's in layer breeders or commercial layers, you will be looking at the threats. What are all the threats I'm having? For that threat, what's going to mind these things? So starting from if you look at the major things, the diseases, viral will play a major role more than bacterial. Why we are not having much attention to the bacterial? Bacterial, by and large, with good biosecurity, reasonably you can control it. It's not that critical. But viruses are little tricky. That's second thing, virus you don't get able to control by antibiotics. But bacteria you do. That's why some of the times, for example, E. coli vaccines and all, it comes in optional. Matlab, you can use it or you can still handle with regular sanitation of the water itself. So when you are going to talk on that, always vaccination would means the viral diseases will play a major role. Let us look at it one by one. What is the one which is going to cause and how it's going to impact in our productions? Marex, it's a quite old disease, but still it is present. Even now, recently, some countries do have the serotype 1, some countries don't have a serotype 1. They have only type 1 and 2. When you're having the Marex, better vaccinations like cell-associated vaccines are giving better results. Earlier, we were using only cell-free vaccines. Nowadays, we are using cell-associated vaccines. Even then, there is a catch. Sometimes we do found outbreaks. Probably when it's stressed, when it is being, the immune take will not be good. Vaccine take will not be good. In turn, immune take will not be good. So that's why you will find late Marek cases will be exhibiting. So Marek is a one disease, but when we are going to look at it, the one more what we call commonly is a booster, but actually for Marek there is nothing like booster. There is only one vaccine. The day one, what they do it in parent at the hatchet level is the vaccine. Why even then it is working? Why it is working? Basically, the first vaccine which has been administered is not working well because of whatsoever reason may be. That is why the second application, which you are doing at the farm level, it is working. So regarding Marek, if you're going to look at it, I put a pictures over here. If you look here, the keel bone will become like a blade, or it will be sharpened. So when even the commercial supervisors or the farm level laborers will catch hold the bird and tell, look, this is going to be having a Marek cell. So you can find out the Marek. Marek is still an issue. Coming to Newcastle. If you ask me what is the major trouble in the India, means all over the world, even including the Middle East and all, if you are going to ask me, I would say still the Newcastle is the major trouble. What is the big trouble about the Newcastle? So it's a very simple old thing, sir. That's very old, but the genotype, some of the 7 or some places, some of them it's also 30, it makes the things complicated. The 7 is the one which is very widely recorded. Here, we have observed much higher virulence when you are going to talk on that, because the ICPA value of these particular genotype is more than close to around 1.8. So it's controlling this Newcastle is really a tough job. It's not that easier, even though sometimes when we are going to handle it, you find tough to control, because sometimes when it is attacking quite earlier, your vaccination schedule would not be that much matured enough or sound enough to handle that. If you look at the left side picture of that, that's an old bird. Okay, this is an adult. We had got a problem of that. But when you're going to look at it, the next one, look at this. Yeah, this particular chick is somewhere around 5 weeks of age. They were given with regular 2 shots of live vaccine. But even then, they had got this problem. Sometimes, even after the administration of inactivated also, we do see a problem. The mortality is somewhere hovering around 10 to 15% of the mortality. So this particular thing, when the virus goes into the brain, it's very difficult to control. Normally, if it is an enteric or respiratory, you can, to some extent, you are able to control it. But when the virus is entering into the brain, it's a very, very difficult to control. If you see the lesions on the left side, the papillary hemorrhages is quite easier. Even quite a simple farmer, while doing postmortem, they will look at it and tell, sir, this is ND, sir. Should I give Lasota? This is a very common thing they will ask it. But look at it, the right side, the picture of that. It is like a smashed up appearance, it's a paintbrush appearance of the blood, as if you have taken a blood and painted it there. So this is genotype 13 or 7. So when it's going to have, you are going to have a very, very tough time. Another phenomena, what you are observing, sometimes the production drop noticed, there is not much mortality, but the shape of the eggs changes, like a mango. They commonly call it as a mango egg. This is another symptom of genotype 7, 1, which is being quite well at. So this one, there is a lot of opinions. I will discuss in detail why it is not working or what we should do for this one. Infectious bursal disease, we don't see quite often. It's not a big issue, but only when the birds are immune suppressed. For example, sometimes you are having a toxic lesions or toxicity in your feed, your IBD vaccine fails. When IBD vaccine fails, you will see IBD-like lesions, and then you will see sometimes coccidiosis as well, even in the commercial layers. This and all is because of probably the immune suppressions happened and subsequent outbreak of the disease. Don't forget, IBD itself is again an immunosuppressive disease. In singular, that itself, sometimes if the vaccine application is failed and there is an outbreak, still it causes immunosuppressions. So that's about IBD. Infectious bronchitis. This one fellow is really creating a good amount of trouble in the industry. Definitely, at least in India, I know for sure, this is the one thing which is agreeing. So what is the big deal about IB? IB is not a new disease. IB is quite old as the poultry. But if you are going to look at it, in the laying stages and growing stages, we are having a problem. Let us see what's that type of issues we are finding. Sometimes when you look at the bird, you find the cystic oviduct or water accumulation in the abdomen. It's not ascites. If the ascites is simply if the water is accumulated in the entire body, that is ascites. But this is, you find in a pouch, like the right side of the bird, when you're going to do a postmortem on left side of yours and right side of the bird, you find just near the kidney in the pouch of water you will find. That's called cystic oviduct. This is basically one form of a disease or QX strain of that one it is causing. It's a variant IB. It's not a standard IB. It's a variant IB. This is a different serotype. Okay. When you have got a different serotype, you have got a trouble with the productions, sometimes egg quality issues, sometimes mortality as well. Now, recently I have handled some cases. The growers were having a mortality to the tune of 10%. It was not the excess calcium, it was not excess protein, but it was actually because of this variant IB. The birds were infected. When they are infected in the growing stages, they started exhibiting gout. It continued in the laying stage, and it was keep on going on and on. So probably they were misunderstanding that our calcium is more and we are trying to reduce it, or our water is having hardness, that's why it's happening and all those things. But later on, when we did a sampling and did a PCR and further sequencing, we found it is a confirmed, it is a strain of a variant IB. Then that was one was causing problem. So we have got two issues here: standard IB and variant IB. Standard IB, everybody knows the misshapen eggs, liquefaction of the albumin, the egg quality deterioration, and everything. But when you are going to look at it, this particular thing, this is caused by variant IB. Sometimes in the farm, you will see the birds. If you are going to put the birds on the floor, they will, especially the birds which are in deep litter, you will find they will walk like a penguin. They will stand erect and walk because there is a water in the belly and they are heavier and they pulled out and they don't run like a poultry, they like a penguin. We used to see these cases a lot in the deep litter houses. This is nothing but variant IB. If you ask whether it is present in Indian context, there are some articles saying, yes, it is very well present. You can see emergence of variant infectious bronchitis in India. It has been recently published in 2019. That means this is been very much present and it is there. If you look at it, the article very closely, please look at it. The CL in this denomination type of bird designates commercial layers. That you can see as early as 3 weeks of ages. The kidney is affected. If you look at here, 3 weeks of ages, 2 weeks of ages, nephritis, pale kidney, gout. If you look at the later stages, gout, look at it 3 weeks of age. It is very clearly marked as nephritis and pale kidneys. When they have collected samples and they have run the PCR, it was found positive for nephropathic strains. So that means apart from the standard bronchitis, you do have got variant IB as well. Okay, coming to the next disease, infectious laryngotracheitis. Infectious laryngotracheitis is basically larynx and trachea are affected. You will find raw blood will be there. When you look at the birds, nearby birds, if they are white layers, sometimes when they cough, you will find the blood spots on them, these things. Sometimes if the feeders are empty, commercial layers, generally always there will be feed. So you will not find it difficult to look at it in the feeders. But especially if you are looking at the broiler feeders and all, when the feeders are empty, you can see the blood spots. But on the birds, you can see. These birds have got a very, very peculiar, these things, respiration called pump handling respiration. They will raise his head and they will slowly bring it down because there is an accumulation that's called respiration, pump handling respiration. So sometimes these, when combined with the LPA or H9 infections, they are more devastating. There is another thing nasty about this particular ILT. When it affects this thing, especially trachea, it makes a inflammation and holes out of it. When the holes are happening, it's very, very easier for mycoplasma to go and launch it. After the ILT, the birds suffer very badly because of mycoplasma. So the farmers have to pump in lot of medicine, anti-mycoplasmal drugs later on to overcome this disease. That's a peculiarity of ILT. LPA or H9 infection, it's still there. In some countries, we do have got inactivated vaccines. Some countries don't have got officially the inactivated vaccines. When it gets into the farm, it is very, very difficult to eradicate. Sometimes, especially if it is in a closed houses, they continuously recycle. Even though you may be having higher amount of titers, for example, your titer would be somewhere between 8 to 9. Even then, you would not find a problem of that. But when you are going to look at it, gradually there will be titers will be keep on increasing. That means what? Even though they are not, birds are not dying, even though the litter conditions are fine, but still there is a triggering infection is happening. Because of that trigger, you are having higher levels of seroconversions without vaccination. In that situation, you might ask me, what should we do? Sir, already titers are good. I think that should be okay, no? No, that's not okay. Please remember, when the titers are keep on rising, even though technically you can say protective, but it's not really protective. Reason is that the shedding will be more, and when the titers are at very higher level, suddenly the bird collapses. It succumbs to the disease. So it's very tricky, especially the LPA. HPA, it's a regional. If you look at it, some countries do have got vaccines of live and inactivated. Some countries like India, we don't have HPA vaccines officially, at least. The administration with live and inactivated gives the best result. Especially it comes with the vector vaccine of HVT. You can use it. But some countries don't have got these facilities. So you have to depend upon only the inactivated vaccine. As I mentioned earlier, it allows you only fight once it entered the bird, but when it doesn't prevent the entry of the bird. But in the unvaccinated frogs, the mortality will be very high. Sometimes it's close to near 80 to 90%. Even you can say completely washed out. So this particular vaccine, this disease is a very nasty one. Coryza and cholera is, I would say, they are not that difficult. Some places, most of the places, you can say Coryza is recombinant, but not the cholera. So as per the requirement of your regional listings, you have to choose the vaccine and give it. But the Coryza and cholera, they both have got a trouble is they always invite other respiratory pathogens. So to protect it, you have to do vaccination. Some of your regional things, you may not have much trouble. In that situations, you can choose. If you have got a problem, you can go for it. Otherwise, you can skip, for example, cholera. So this is what about the Coryza and cholera. Okay, coming to recent vaccine failure. Vaccine failure is a big subject. Many a times, the farmers used to tell me when there is a problem, sir, I have done vaccination, but still it has happened. There is one thing we should understand. Vaccination is not equal to immunization. What is the purpose of that vaccination? It is immunization, no? That means you are supposed to provide immunity to the bird, right? But in this case, you have done vaccination. But what happened? The birds are not immunized. Sir, what is this? What you are telling? For the immunization, we are doing vaccination. How it cannot be immunized? Yes, there is a possibility. Sometimes when you are going to have mild toxins in the field, they are immunosuppressive. When they are immunosuppressive, when you are going to administer any vaccine, they are not going to take off or produce the same level of seroconversion as expected. That time, what is happening? You have done vaccination, but the birds are not able to have produced proper immunity. Again, you will ask one question. When immune suppressed bird, Sir, I will give one another vaccine. See, you can give another n number of vaccines, but the bird immune organs, if they are not developed, the result is again the same. They will produce immunity, but not suboptimally. Sometimes pesticides which has been sprayed in the corn or in the agricultural commodities which come into the field, they also are immune suppressive. So you have to take into account when the feed are having the toxicity, they tend to have immune suppressive. In turn, the titers are not going to develop. Not only titers, even cell-mediated immunity also not going to develop properly. Coming to failure of another subject is improper application. A classical example is, I can say, a Marek. When I am able to ask the vaccine, the problem when they are having this thing, they will tell, sir, we are able to do it very fast. How much you are able to do it, sir? I will be able to do so much, thousands or 1,000 plus vaccine per person. Some say even 1,500 birds, chicks, I am doing it, sir. But when you please remember, if it's automatic vaccinator, that's slightly different. But if you're going to do it manually, you might be doing it very fast, but please remember, if the accuracy is depend upon how much efficiently you have injected that into the bird. Second one, the thawing procedure and the diluent temperature, within how much time you have given, all those things, it matters. So if you're not going through it, the Marex, you have given vaccine, but they have not been immunized. That's Marek vaccination, improper application is a classical example. Another thing is stress. Sometimes we look at our vaccination schedule and we tell, sir, we have got a big list of vaccine. We have to do it. Suppose you are getting chicks from a long distance at a very summer in a very hot day. You are trying to look at it and say, sir, I have to do it very fast. Fast, you do it immediately. But when the birds are stressed, when the hormonal levels are very high, when the birds are dehydrated, even if you do it at the day one itself, there would be improper intake of the vaccine. Again, Marex is a classical example of that. We have seen when the birds are transported longer distance, when they have administered not a single dose, even the double dose also. Even the double dose, not at 2 times of the doses, 4 hours interval, we do 2 doses. Even then, we have seen outbreaks, late Marek in that cases. So you have to take into the account of stress. That's why in recent times, the chick transportation vehicles and all is air-conditioned vehicles. The reason is that when the chicks are stressed, the vaccine uptake is failure. So you have to take into the account of that. Third reason, another reason why the vaccine could go, sometimes, sir, you are saying IB, infectious bronchitis. I have given an infectious bronchitis vaccine. But if you look at it, what is the vaccine you have done? You have done mostly Massachusetts vaccine, Massachusetts strains. If you're doing mostly Massachusetts strains, you will tend to have protection against that, but they don't have got a very protection against the variant. They have got a 30 to 35% of cross protection against the variant, but they are very low. They cannot protect it. In that situation, you will get an outbreak. So that's another wrong serotype selection, or the right serotype has been not incorporated into your schedule. Second one is virulence. Again, for Newcastle, you are going to use certain vaccines. For example, group 2, Lasota, we are using. Sir, whether it will protect or not. There are two different opinions coming out. Some group of scientists believe that the existing vaccine itself is able to produce it. But some group of scientists believe, no, it's not. You require a specific vaccines. But in my opinion, to the extent what I have understood in the practical, when the titer levels are higher, we are able to protect successfully. That much I could say. For example, in the earlier stages, when you are going to rise the titer in the chick stage itself, comparatively better, even though the chicks won't produce that high titer like 9 and 10 and all, but at least 6 to 7, something like that, if you are going to rise it faster, we are seeing better protection. That is one thing. And another one is vaccine failure. CAV is another one. If the birds are having chicken anemia virus, they're potentially immunosuppressive. You will find IBD outbreak, you will find coccidiosis outbreak, everything will happen. So you have to take care about how much is that this thing, and you have to go for it. Bacterial vaccines sometimes fail. That could be because of the serotype. Sometimes they do have got a facial swellings and all. Especially in the winter months, people tend to say, sir, this is a vaccine reaction. It is not actually vaccine reaction. You have not thawed the vaccine properly. Birds room temperature means when you are what time you are doing it, sir, we say at room temperature. When you are doing at room temperature, the summer room temperature and winter room temperature is quite different. In winter, sometimes in North India and all, you will find temperature around 15 degrees Celsius. In summer, the room temperature will be 35 plus. They are not. When you are injecting very cold, the vaccine is not able to absorb very easily. They form a lump and they become cellulitis and created. So in that particular thing, improper thawing is actually the reason for the failures. Okay, now coming to the vaccination strategy. You have to draw a vaccines according to the requirement, what we have. Sometimes you may not have the problem in some other regions is having. You have to very carefully evaluate. And second thing is choose the vaccines, what is available. You have to readjust it. Sometimes if you are having a diseases, like for example, pox, you are affecting, sometimes you can prepone it. If it is too earlier, you can add, instead of fowl pox, you can add pigeon pox, which is milder, and then you go for a fowl pox. Likewise, you have to readjust it. Second thing, you have to monitor the trend line. There is something called minimum to maximum values and called for our farm, this would be our region, this would be our the range of titers. That's called a baseline values. If it is going down the baseline value, you have to act. If it's going high on the baseline value, you have to differentiate whether it's a vaccinal titer or it's an infection titer. Okay, to look at it, let us look at some vaccines. If you look at these vaccines in this particular schedule, you find basically the IB Lesota is there, and IBD killed is there, Folpox, Oncoryza, and again they have done with R2B or RB, and VVND, which is LPA. And again, in the end of the point of delay, again is coming with IB plus ND kill. Here, they have done a very, very basic strain of vaccines. But look at the other vaccine schedule, which is the next one. Here is again the vaccine schedule, but they have incorporated in this. The farms were having gout, so they have incorporated the doubted IB, and on day 9, they have incorporated IB variant. This IB variant, sometimes even day 9 also will be little later. If you think that it's tougher, you have to bring it to the day 1 itself. And again, look at it, the day 9, in the ND-IB killed and IB multi-strain killed. So multi-strain killed is the variant vaccine. So this particular schedule as readjusted based upon the requirement. So based upon the situations and that requirement, you may have to readjust it. Coming to the vaccination schedule strategies, I mentioned spacing between vaccines is very important. For example, IBD, minimum 10 days gap should be the ideal. Don't try to push it so earlier. Some people do it on 10 days itself. That would be too earlier because the IBD levels at the MAB is always used to be higher. Anywhere between 12 to 14 is ideal. Newcastle disease, looking at it, it is more critical, as I mentioned earlier, rising up of the vaccinal titer is, birth titer is very important. You could give genotype specific vaccines. I have no objection whatsoever, but I would be happy to see that if you are able to any vaccine, whether it's a standard vaccine or the variant vaccine on that genotype specific one, if the titers are better, it gives a better results. IB, as I mentioned earlier, when you are going to have an issue, if you feel that combination of variant vaccine, maybe iBird or 4/91 is better. If you are going to look at it before the point of lay, I would prefer you should have one more vaccine of the live vaccine. If you think its levels are higher, if you have a choice, you can use IB inactivated variant vaccine also into your schedule. That gives a better backup. If you look at the international publications, they always prefer, not always, many a time they say the combination with day one is increasing the protection against QX. You don't need to have a QX strain itself, but 4/91 or 793-B or C or double-8, all are same. You could use any one of the strategies. For ILT, 2 shots of these things gives a better results. Sometimes some people practice one vaccine, but I would prefer it's better to have a two vaccines. LPA and HPA, it's quite big subject per se. You have to look at it, the regional level of the issues, what is the availability of the vaccines, and what is the level of intended protections you are expecting. Some people are comfortable with feed withdrawal as well. For example, in India, they don't say that I would like to use this vaccine. I will not do the vaccine. Probably if it comes, I would withdraw the feed for 3 or 4 days. Then it will come back to that. It's up to them. Some countries like neighboring countries like Bangladesh and all, they don't do the practice, they go by only vaccinations and proper protections. So it depends. Similar is the case with HPA. So depending upon the situation and the availability, you have to take care of what is that has to be done, and you have to go ahead with that. Coming to the last of my presentation, what's the take-home message? While scheduling you sufficient gap as much as possible. It's not that I have a vaccine and I am going to do it, or the bird has to take it, but you have to look at it. Birds also require a sufficient time because every vaccine, the immunity production is a costing affair. It's not that much easy thing. So you should give some rest for the birds and sufficient time for the bird to give a better this thing. Certain vaccines work better in the area. You have to take cognizance of what is working better for you, and you have to decide the situation. There is nothing like that. X is working there, and I did that same thing. Some schedule work for me. No, it's not so. The vaccine schedule is a dynamic one, not a fixed one. As much as the field viruses evolve and the disease challenges evolve, you need to adjust your vaccine schedule to increase or decrease. You can do that. So by doing so, you could be able to properly protect the bird and get best out of it. Thanks for your attention. With this, I formally complete my presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, first question is, even if ND and LP titers are in the range of 8 to 9 HI, titer drops in layers production post 27. I think the question is like, even at the 8 to 9 HI titers, drop in layer production post 27 to 28 weeks is some more reasons and remedies for this.
Yeah. This is one major thing I would say still the veterinarians or the producers not able to understand it. We are trying to work it out on this particular angle. There are a couple of theories which has been people are working and they are telling that that could be the possibilities. I'm repeating, there are possibilities, but still it's not proven. I would say it might take some time to come on that. We are also working on that. One theory was what was in there is people believe that it is a type of variant LPA or H9 infection, and probably when you are going to keep it include it, the variant type of a different strains, they may protect. There are few people opining that, but I did not have a very concrete more number of replicates for that. But that is the one particular answer we found from the market. Second thing is that there are opinions that it could be metapneumovirus as well. People have done some trials that's going on, but both the things, I would say it is little early for me to conclude, because to conclude or say something, we require larger number of data points. Unfortunately, I did not have, but I have only some clues or some leads or try which is going on. Probably in some other occasions or meeting, I would be happy to share that. But as of now, this is the only two possible things. But nobody is in a was able to crack the conditions, especially in India.
Yeah, thanks, sir. We move on to the next question.
Okay.
Which genotype is prevalent in India? I guess this is related to ND he is asking. Rahul Krishnagar.
Kshirshagar. Yeah, Rahul Kshirshagar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doctor, this one is assuming if it is an ND, what it is he is asking. See, we have got this genotype 7 or 13. It's a little reclassified as of now. That is the one which is causing the trouble. In that case, as I mentioned earlier, when we were getting the problems quite earlier, the producers are getting little tricky. Reason is that in the earlier stages, the immune organ itself is not developed. Immune organ develops after 7 to 10 days. So even though you have got a good amount of vaccine, even if you are going to do the vaccination, bird has to have immune organ, bird has to produce the immunity. That may not happen. In that situation, that will be a delayed production of the insect only. So the intended release will not happen. In that particular situations, there is some for the companies, what they are doing is that they are using the technology of the broiler vaccinations. Broiler vaccines have got a faster releasing technique because they are short-lived birds. Their adjuvant is quite different. The regular Newcastle disease vaccine, which is for long run, they have a different type of adjuvant. But for the broiler, they have got a different adjuvant because it releases fast. They use the technology in these commercial layers to boost up the titer. By doing so, you can use it. As far as your question is concerned, the genotype is, we can say a genotype 13 or 7. Both are misnormally, it is called, it is the only thing is available. Okay.
Yeah, the next question is, sir, it is again same related to ND. Genotype 2, whether it provides cross protection.
The answer is this is my as I mentioned earlier, there are two schools of opinion. I'm repeating. I don't would like to comment that which is correct or which is right. One, somebody says yes, it protects. Somebody says it doesn't protect. But in my practical experience, I'm repeating. In my practical experience, when I am going to give the inactivated vaccines, earlier stages itself, I'm trying to give slightly higher doses, employing the broiler vaccines. I could be able to rise the titer of NDHI to a greater extent that the birds are not affected. So I believe if that is the case, different genotype it is there, it should be affecting. But what I am seeing with existing vaccine, inactivated vaccine itself, I am able to protect or cross protect. I'm repeating, cross protect. Even they are not considering this one, and it is able to protect the variants. So probably with genotype specific vaccines, you can be getting better results, but that has to be vetted very thoroughly. But I am getting these results. I believe that genotype regular 2 itself is able to protect or cross protect the variants.
Okay, so okay, thank you. We move on to the next question from Rahul Shahar.
Okay.
When layers affected by IB and it affects oviduct, will it covers later or permanently damaged?
IB affected, oviduct affected this one. If the damage is earlier stages, it recovers. It recovers and it comes back to the faster. For example, sometimes when the IB affected birds, we tend to provide the variant vaccine even during the layer stages. But in the early stages of the life, when we have found these things and we found mild damages and it was able to recover. But what in the later stages, for example, maybe after 15 days or 20 days of age, we found the oviduct has shrunken like a pencil. You will not be able to see the oviduct very clearly. You will find it a very, very small, like a thin pencil. But in that particular case, whenever we try to, afterwards, we found the productions have not developed and they become culled, and eventually we have to cull them. So it depends upon the age period. We have to look at this.
Yeah, one more question from the same gentleman.
Okay.
Differential diagnosis of MG, MS, and IB.
Okay. See, MG, MS, and IB, to some extent, you can differentiate. If it is an MG, mycoplasma, many times the bird, it will kill the bird because mostly it affects the thoracic air sacs and lungs, it's there. And you will find if it is very severe, there is the death of the bird or respiratory sounds will be very severe and production drop will be there. If it is an MS, more than the thoracic air sacs, the affection will be on the abdominal air sacs. That is why your eggshell apical abnormalities happen, because the abdominal air sacs are very closer to the oviduct. When it is touching, it passes on because your blood is not reaching air sacs. So when very easily, that's why you find it here in this case, MS, you don't find affections with the this passes on, and that is it is not creating a death per se, but it is creating eggshell defects and all. You will find a lot of pimple eggs and all those things. But if it is an IB, you will find a moderate amount of damages in the oviduct, and egg peritonitis will be there. And when you are going to look at it, you will find liquefaction of the albumin at the convalescent phase. But you will not find liquefaction of albumin in the MGMS. By these things, you can differentiate MGMS and the.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next question from Dr.
Yeah.
Somi Reddy. In
Okay.
case of outbreak of ND in a flock of growers or layers, giving live Lasota or IB will help the birds to develop immunity. What is the mode of action of live vaccines when virus is there already in the flock?
Okay. Sir, it is in this case, it is just like a competitive exclusion only. It is not going to give any further protection of that one, sir. Number one, there is a competition between vaccine virus and disease viruses in occupying the receptors. When the receptors are blocked, you don't get chance for the vaccine and disease viruses to further replicate and further migrate into the bloodstream and further migrate into the brain. Number one. Number two, when it is being blocked, the replication is blocked, the shedding of the viruses is reduced so that the contamination and for subsequent spreading to the same flock or the adjacent flock is affected. Third one is that when the virus quantity in the viremia, when it is very high, you will have the trouble of reaching the oviduct. This particular thing will be protecting that. That is why at the earlier stage, when you are at the outbreak and the outset of the outbreak, when you are going to give either Lasota or B1, they are going to prevent it just like a competitive exclusion. And by these three mechanisms, it prevents the bird, but not for the immunity.
Okay, sir. Yeah, moving on to the next question, where there is no name from the questioner, but what can we do when there is active LPA infection in our farm?
Okay. Sir, if it is an active LPA infection, see, there is one thing which we widely practiced in India is a withdrawal of the feed. If it is earlier ages, maybe some 3 days or something like that, you can do. If it is birds are having little bit fat, maybe the older birds, you can go up to 5 days of it. So when there is no production, when there is no heat production increment on the bird, it reduces. Now, if it is an LPI, there would be greenish mucus diarrhea will be there, and respiratory symptoms will be there. If you do not want to reduce it, you can only do, in some countries, they don't do practice. They just give only the birds having very high amount of body temperature. That particular thing, you can give paracetamol or salicylic acid, and you can give some herbal, what you call essential oils, so that the nasal occlusions will be taken care. But in that particular period of time, try to keep the bird little cooler, because there will be huge amount of heat production will be there in the bird, and slowly it will affect and the production drop will be there. You have to take a note, what is the stage of infection? The feed withdrawal is very important. If you have crossed days, few days, for example, 1 week or so, and trying to do the feed withdrawal, sometimes they don't work. They have got pluses and minuses on that. Better is prevention. But if you are not doing prevention, the only alternative is feed withdrawal. If you are comfortable with losing few eggs. But if you are not going to do that, productions will bounce back, but they may not reach the peak or the intended original production. Reason is that by the time they affected oviduct and they don't reach back to the norm. That is the pros and cons of both approach.
Okay, sir. Yeah, we move to the next question is from Bhutan, from Singhe Darji. We do
Okay.
not carry out vaccination against coccidiosis. So please recommend me the best age to give the preventive anti-coccidial drugs to the birds.
Okay.
Uh,
Right. See, probably if it is a commercial layer, if they are not using cages, if you are, I'm not quite sure whether the practices is in cages, or raised platform or the floor platform. I will take
Yeah,
assuming
whether it is
that,
breeders or sorry.
yeah, plus doctor, please doctor, please.
Yeah, whether it is breeders or commercial layers is also it's not mentioned here.
Gentleman is attending a layer seminar. Probably if he is going to look at it from the layer perspective and the breeder perspective, the answer is different. See, I would say two different things. If it's a breeder, I will take first breeder and come to the commercial layer. If it's a breeder, sometimes you could use madramycin or decoquinate alternatively in starter and means up to certain stages and later stages. But the catch is, even then, I'm repeating, even then, when you are moving to the laying shed, you have to give one anticoccidial treatment program like toltrosuril. Reason is that toltrosuril is the one which is got a wider spectrum, including Eimeria bruneti. Eimeria bruneti is the one which is a long-lived birds you get. Generally, the products which is like Amprolium has got a limited spectrum against the entire species. So they are very good at Tenella and all those things, but they don't have got a good spectrum against these bruneti. In this case, you can use chemicals. You can use when you are having higher amount ionophores, you can use it. But best even then, I am saying that whenever you are doing transfer to the birds, you have to do it. Okay. Now coming to the assuming if it is a commercial layers, sometimes people keep the bird in commercial deep litter level cages itself, and they are rearing, especially in Bangladesh and all, the practice is there. In this kind of situation, the same thing is applied to here. You can use madramycin, you can use decoquinate, and when you are going to shift it, again, as I mentioned, the first stage, when the around 4 to 5 weeks of age, you can go with the Amprolium, but when you are going to shift it, go with toltrosuril, 2 days, 7 milligram per kg.
Yes, sir. We move on to the next question from Venki Madhametla. Is giving killed vaccine was helpful in case of young frog 23 to 25 weeks of age for maintaining high protective titers during peak production? Peak production stress here.
Yeah. Here I assume that he is mentioning about ND killed because at this age, in case of young flock, 25 to 30 weeks of high protective titer during peak production. Yeah. See, the peak production stress is happening. The birds start producing commercial layers at 20 weeks of age itself. Before the point of lay itself, I would prefer that you should able to give the vaccine. It is not advisable to catch the bird anything between 45 weeks of age, again for the inactivated vaccine. Suppose if the titers are not that high and still you have a trouble, in that situations, you can use this methodology, but preferably try to go with live vaccines. In case, if the farm is having a high challenge, or if your farm is known for infections and you are having more issues, in that case, you can handle it, but thaw the birds properly and give anti-stress medications and then you inject it. It definitely helps, but the catching at this age quite tricky.
Yes. Thank you. And from Mohil Bansal, the question is, when we getting titers checked for ND, we should go for general titers of ND or specific G7 or G13 titers?
As of now, in Indian context is concerned, we quote all our hemagglutinin antigens currently with the regular Lasota only, group 2 only. We don't have got a facilities for doing G7 or 13, but maybe what I heard is from in some countries, they have got a facility, for example, Indonesia, to do that genotype specific titer testing. But as of in India, as I know, it is not available.
Okay. So we move on to the next question from Dr. Manish. Some consultants prefer ILT vaccine post-infection as treatment part, as it comes in many cases even after 2 vaccine doses. What do you suggest?
We can use. Sometimes we are employing this to contain it. See, there are 2 different type of vaccines. One is kidney cell culture vaccines. Another one is embryonated vaccine. The earlier suggestions was that try to use the cell culture initially and try to do embryonated later. But of late, given the context, if the vaccines are not available officially, you don't have got an option except to go for a embryonated vaccines only. Embryonated vaccines, when you are going to use it at the time of outbreak, they give a harsh reaction and the mortality will increase it, then only it come down. But on the contrary, when you are going to use it, the tissue culture vaccines, you take time, but its slam was slower, but there will be lingering mortality. I would prefer you should go for ILT vaccine embryonated itself at that time of outbreak. It is a suggested practice. It is followed internationally as well. And it is giving good results. You can do it.
Yeah, thank you. And we move on to the next question from Dr. Raj Reddy. What is the minimum gap between 2 IB live vaccines in laying stage?
If you are having very high challenges, I would say you can use once in 4 weeks. High challenge, I am repeating. Generally, that doesn't happen. Very few forms I have seen. 6 to 8 weeks would be very ideal. When you are one catch is when you are going to use it, please look at it. When you give a vaccine in IB, the titer will not rise, but actually it will go down. If it is high, I'm repeating. For example, if the titers are somewhere around 9,000, when you give live vaccine, titer will not go high, it will come down. But if it is 3,000, 4,000, when you are giving vaccine, titer will go to 4,000, 5,000. So you have to differentiate in a different way, especially IB is concerned. 6 weeks to 8 weeks would be ideal.
The next question from Dr. Manish. Whether 4/91 or 793/B live vaccines are safe during laying?
Very safe during laying. We can use it.
Next question from Dr. Mahesh. What should be the ideal gap between live to live and live to killed and killed to killed vaccine?
This is a very, very tougher question. I have to do a lot of permutation and combination to answer this. For this, there is no one answer. I try to answer it. See, when the bird in 20 weeks of age, you have got 15 vaccines. You don't have a choice. Only thing is that when you are going to give a high stress vaccine, immediately you should not give any other vaccine. For example, you are given ILT vaccine. Within 1 week time or 5 days time, if you are going to give another killed vaccine, the vaccine reactions will be very high. But you can give Lasota vaccine and give killed vaccine within 3 to 4 days. Nothing will happen. but it depends upon the vaccinal strain. So that is very important. Killed vaccine, you can space it very means as much as possible. You space it out before 20 weeks of age. For example, at least minimum 1 week gap try to give. That is very. Only thing is live to killed vaccine. For example, if you are giving IB live vaccine, you should not give immediately IB killed vaccine because of interferon phenomena. There is some differences will be there. So probably only that is the vaccine you have to give space for 3 weeks time.
Next question from Balasubramanian Vardarajan. What is the role of avian metapneumovirus in current scenario in commercial layers and broiler breeders? What is the role of doing AMPV vaccination in controlling the same? Kindly give your suggestions.
Yeah. AMPV is the one which has been quite a longer time. It is prevalent in India. I would say from last 10 years, I am observing. We have got metapneumovirus serotype A is quite prevalent. But how much it is creating a trouble, it is still not very clear. AMP alone don't cause any trouble. AMP in the presence of other diseases, for example, simple ammonia, it created huge trouble. AMPV in combination with mycoplasma in current situation, I am seeing creating a trouble. Coming to the presence, it is very much present. No doubt, it is there. But the situation in the broiler breeders, AMPV is creating some the production issues, and after administrating AMPV vaccine, metapneumovirus vaccine or TRT vaccine, we are seeing good results, and we are seeing a really good response in the broiler breeders. In commercial layers, AMPV vaccine is commercial layer breeders, especially in Bangladesh. I am seeing a really good response. There is some meaning. But in commercials, I'm not quite sure how much it is been helping. But there are trials happening around in India. I would be able to give my opinion after some time, maybe in some next meetings or so. I'm observing the results, but I cannot comment at this moment.
Yes. So we take on the next question from Tulsi Ram. Is it ND noticed in first 2 weeks of age in broilers or layers? If it is, then how to prevent it?
ND first 2 weeks of age, I have not seen much in the first 2 weeks of age. But theoretically, assuming if it is there, probably first week of vaccine in general, there would be one 5th day or 6th day, one live vaccine would be there. Please go ahead with that. And if it is in layers, somewhere around 14 weeks of age, while giving IBD vaccination, there would be ND plus IBD killed vaccine would be there. When you are going to combine these two, definitely it is protecting. For the broilers, later stages only we see a lot of problem. But for the layers, we see quite earlier, especially genotype 13 or 7, what we got, that we are getting it. But at least it is starting at the 3rd to 4th week only, not in the 2nd week. But this particular schedule might help you.
Thank you. So we take on the next question. Can we give live IB vaccine at 23 to 24 weeks of age during peak production?
Preferably avoid it. It is better to use it before point of production. If it is a commercial layer, try to complete it somewhere between 17 weeks of age, 16 to 17 weeks of age. If the farm is having very prone for the IB infection, we can give. There is nothing wrong in giving that. As a matter of fact, as a general, do not give it at that age. I would prefer before point of production, you have to use this vaccine, and afterwards, when the peak production declines, you have to use it. Say something around 40 weeks of age in commercial layer at least.
Is a next question, or it's like a suggestion from Dr. Sudhir. Is it not a good practice to use standard intermediate type of IBD live vaccine in the first week when we know that MAB levels will be very negligible in around 5% of the chicks?
Yes, the answer is that's a very good suggestion. Definitely going with the intermediate and intermediate plus is always a better thing. And I definitely say that's a very good suggestion. And we can do that. I would prefer to do that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for something this. And there is one from Shashikant Patel. In broilers, 3 ND live vaccines are practiced at 5 to 6 days, 19 to 21 days, and 28 to 30 days. Is it okay to get better titers?
Yes, this is a high intense farm, and you can do that. Here, only the catch is that live vaccines, they tend to give some better titers. But please do not forget it. In this kind of situation in summer, even because stress is there, the vaccine take will not be there. But when you keep on giving live vaccine, especially when the summer dust will be there, ammonia smell will be more, mycoplasma will be on the higher rise. This will create more stress to the bird. Better would be go with two doses of live vaccine, and preferably one killed would be in the earlier stages, would give a better results. Or if it is a broiler, maybe a vector vaccine would be a better choice.
Yes. Next question is from me, Vijay Kumar. ND more the ICPA value, is it whether it requires virulent vaccine or genotype 2 vaccine is sufficient?
The ICPA value is more, it indicates the handling of the virus or the diseases would be tough. For example, when it is very high. Now, the question is, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, when you are going to rise your titer to the sufficient level, it is protecting the viruses from entering into the brain. It is protecting the virus in going into the oviduct, and it is giving the results. Maybe, as I mentioned earlier, as of now, even though two school of opinion is coming, nothing is proved very concretely that this is the right way and this is the wrong way. So I would say, in my experience, at least in my experience, I am able to manage genotype different vaccines through the genotype 2 itself.
Okay, sir. As we are getting, there are many questions and the time is getting short. So we go with some of the selective questions and then we try to answer us through their email or. Sure. What is the differential diagnosis between IB and ILT in mid-lay, particularly in summer season?
What is the differential diagnosis between IB
and ILT?
IB and ILT in mid-lay, particularly summer season. Okay. See, IB and ILT, if you are going to look at it from the tracheal point, the respiratory form of IB is mostly in young chicks only. They don't create a big trouble in the layers. Diagonally, you will find a pinpoint kind of hemorrhages will be there if it is in the chick stage. But if it is in adult, if it is in the trachea, in the same thing, when you look at it, ILT, you will find trachea at the surface level, there it would be white only. Their mild congestion will be there. They would not be so congested as if it is an LPA. But occult blood will be there. Dripping of the blood will be there. So, but in later stages, if you look at it, it will be mixed with the bacterial infection and it will turn into cheesy like mosses or white tinged thing, like a mucus, it will be there. So that is ILD. So you can very easily differentiate IB and ILD by looking at the tracheids.
Yeah, one more question about ILT. Is there any new variant in ILT right now? Because most of the forms, the mortality is not controlling and have lameness issues.
ILT and lameness, doctor?
Yeah, ILT and lameness. Mortality due to ILT and they also have lameness.
Okay.
So he's asking
Variant-
any variant is causing this problem.
Yeah. See, there are many strains. There are 6 to 7 groups are there in ILT. Some of them are, as I mentioned earlier, most of the disease strains which are being isolated in and typified by our restricted fragment RFPL method, it is showing that it is a positive for the vaccinal strain only. That means it's recycling. Only those strains are recycling from farmed. Once you have given vaccine to your farm, and if you are withdrawing it, again that farm is getting affected. That is why once ILT is introduced, always they suggest do not withdraw it. Again, one period of time you will get it. That is the first thing. Second thing, regarding the variants, there are some studies in Australia, or I could say, some differences are there in compared to the protection, but not because of the variants, because of the nature of the virus, the candidate they have chosen. There are differences to some extent. So I would say as of now, there is, I don't have much knowledge on the variant, but I have knowledge on this one. That gives some the possibilities of the protection, number one, and number two is whether it's a cell culture or it is a second embryo. But regarding lameness, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure whether ILT is giving any lameness. I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. So now we move on to the next question. iBird or 4/9 second dose better to be done around the 8th to 9th week or at point of lay?
Okay, if you are going to use the vaccine at day 1, it is better to use it 8 to 9 weeks of age. Suppose you are using the vaccine somewhere between 14 days, it is better to use it at 13 to 14 weeks of age. It depends upon the primers and the booster.
Yes, sir. So there is one more question about IB. Does B1 MA5 live vaccine during laying period affects adversely on reproductive organs or production?
Okay. Sometimes, if the priming is not done properly, they give some drop in production. That's a temporary. They don't affect oviduct, they don't, these things, they come back to the production, but there is a transient drop in production. I would say if you are going to do 20 times or 30 times, one time you will get it. But when we analyze it, the priming was not done properly. In that kind of situation, not only for MA5, for any IB vaccine, we have seen this reaction. But in general, it is 100% safe to use it. We are using it in layers, we are using it in breeders. We are not seeing it if it is properly bred.
Again, about IB, there are 3 questions on the same topic, so we can club together the questions. The
Yes,
IB QX strain cystic gout in case of outbreak, please give guide a line of treatment.
Okay.
Similarly, for variant IB from 20 to 30 weeks during the infection, what is how to overcome? So it's a similar question around IB.
Okay. Now I can take it together. See, this problem of damage of that oviduct, or this happens, kidney damages happen, the primordial, not in the primordial, in the first 2 weeks itself. When there is an outbreak or when there is an infection occurred in the earlier stages, sometimes when at the peak period of time, you will try to look at it, the titer, and say, sir, my body's IB titers are good. But it's not true. That's not the real way of interpretation. Why? Problem has happened in the first 3 weeks of age. But you are trying to look at the titer at 25 weeks of age and say, interpret by PCR, interpret by titer, saying that there is no problem. No. Switch is somewhere, bulb is here. When switch is there, you have to go and look for their problem, not here. The same way, when you are having a problem of cystic oviduct, as I mentioned earlier, when you are giving this live vaccine, in my personal experience, it is reducing. Whatever has developed, they are dying off later stages, but it prevents the further infection, and the production is improving and hatchability is also improving. Second question, can we give on 20 to 23 weeks of age? Yes, we can.
Yes, sir. And we move on to the next question. What additional vaccinations need to be done for keeping the birds up to 100 weeks of age?
This keeping up to 100 weeks of age is a new phenomena. We are finding it in most of the layers. See, probably you have to look at it only two things. What is the decay of the antibody levels or the titer levels? Mostly ND and IB. Other things don't create a much trouble. When you are looking at the titer levels, somewhere up to 7 level, even then it is protecting in case of ND. But if you are looking at IB, the titer were somewhere between 3,000 to 8,000 is the range. If anything goes closer to 3,000 or 4,000, you find sometimes trouble. But on the contrary, we are not finding going down, but we are finding it going up. That means you have to look up the trend upline, upward trend. When there is an upward trend continuously without any vaccinations, that means you are in trouble. You have to administer at that time. Once in 4 weeks, once in live Lasota, people used to give. But at least if you are doubtful, in the next time, next 8th week, instead of only Lasota, you give Lasota means ND plus IB. When you are going to keep it, you will keep the IB also under check, ND also under check. You can happily keep the bird up to 100 weeks.
Yes, sir. And next question. Feed toxicity can cause immunosuppression. So whether it is a reversible condition later?
See, when the immune organs are damaged, they are, that's a tough one. I'm not quite sure whether it is an, is asking whether the immune suppression is reversible. Okay, I know I'm not sure about that answer. I am not sure about that answer, but the impact can be minimized. For example, we have seen, let me give some answer to this in practical sense. We had a flock, when we were giving continuously the titers, it never went up. It went never, we were repeatedly giving vaccine to maintain the titer, but the flock was not the normal. Probably I will look for some answer. Maybe at this time, I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't know the answer. Sorry for that.
Okay, sir. There is question about CAV. How to prevent CAV infections in layer chicks and goyas? What should be a vaccination strategy in commercial layer?
Probably for this, the previous question, Doctor, sorry for that. For the previous question, Dr. Krishna Reddy is there and Dr. Prasad is there. Probably I would be happy to listen from them seniors if they could answer this one. Panelists.
Yeah, Dr. Prasad has unmuted himself.
Krishna sir, please repeat the question once again.
The question is the toxicity causes immunosuppression and whether it gets reversed once the condition is removed in the later phase, whether the immunosuppression is
as per my knowledge is suppose if it occurs in the early stages of the life, that is especially chicks and growers, again regaining this immunity may be a difficult thing, sir, because all the immunity organs development will observe before 4 weeks of time. Something happens at this time, that is before 4 weeks, because of the early toxicity. It is very difficult, sir.
Okay, sir. So we thank you, sir, and we move on to the
Thank
next
you, sir.
question. What is the best CV vaccination prevention program for a commercial layer?
Commercial layer, there is no scientifically proven vaccination program for the commercials. It has to be had the CAV vaccine itself for basically for the parents only, not for the commercials. But even then, in India, I'm hearing that inactivated vaccines and all is available. But I'm not quite sure that is the right way to handle it. But in my opinion, the parental vaccinations is quite critical. Second thing, the day-old chicks, which is coming from the parents, should be free from CAV. That is the only way. Time, age-dependent immunity is the one factor which will give the immunity to the bird. When it is 3 weeks of age, till the 3 weeks of age, the parental titers will protect. The birds will try to pick up the infections and get a robust immunity. In later on, that will be lifelong. That is how it should work. But the commercials, globally, there is nothing we give for commercials CAV vaccine.
And can you, I hope you can take one question, sir. It's about the IB
Yes.
subject.
Sure.
When we do spray vaccine at day 1, we get mortality at 14th day around 1%, but we don't get the mortality when it is done by oral method. It is from Mohil Bansal.
Okay. This is because of applications. There is a particular nozzle size is there. For example, if it is a finer particle, you get into the bronchioles and you get it. And the second thing is that when you are going to do it, the height between the chicks and the nozzle is very, very critical. If you are using the automatic sprayers, they don't get it. But if you are using the hand sprayer and trying to do it, sometimes I have seen them. That is the reason we say IB vaccines, especially for different, I think around 180 to 200 nozzle micron size has to be there or something like that. That has to be followed very carefully. Number one. Number two, the water which is being used has to be absolutely germ-free. Number two. Number three, height of the vaccine from the nozzles to the bird's level is very, very critical for these things. If it is not proper, I have seen mortality. Yes, that is possibility.
Over to Mr. Venkat. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, doctors, Dr. Ramakrishna and Dr. Jayaraman, for the lively Q&A. Having said that, Dr. Jayaraman and all the other panelists, thank you very much for your support and highlighting for providing us this platform for hosting this webinar. Thank you very much.